right, and we are live. Lord Cognito here, IronLordPodcast, lordsofgaming.net, and who is this fine gentleman we have in the realm of PAX East today?
I am Octavian, or Chris, whichever.
Lord Octavian in the realm.
Sure. Why not?
But man, what's your role?
I work in design and testing on both Path of Exile 1 and 2.
Path of Exile 1 and 2. Now, the Lords just played Path of Exile 2, had a phenomenal experience.
That's good to hear.
Yes. Now, for those like myself or people who come from other top-down games, give us your explanation of Path of Exile 2 and what it is for someone who knows absolutely nothing about the franchise.
To go back in time a little, about 11 years ago now, the founders of the company made PoE 1 because they absolutely fell in love with Diablo 2 and wanted to make their own version of the game.
I said it reminded me of Diablo 2, the overall aesthetic and just the absolute grim darkness of the actual game.
Yeah, all of that is very, very purposeful.
Okay.
And that's how PoE 1 came to be, but obviously back then the company was a lot smaller, the resources were a lot more finite. And so Path of Exile 2 is built off the back of 10 or 11 years of successful continued growth on the first game, and this is another whack at making the perfect grimdark ARPG.
Awesome. The first thing I noticed in explanation of your journey was the hardcore nature of the game. As far as I'll be honest, the first thing that really impressed me was how expansive the skill tree was.
Oh, yes.
Wow. That thing looked like a star map of constellation of things.
Yeah. So it's still very much under construction, but that that scale is not going anywhere. And I'll pass that along back to Rory. He's the one who builds it, and he puts a lot of time, effort, and sweat into making it. So
sounds good. So again, in the demo that we played, got a chance to preview 3 classes, right? So we had Ranger,
Sorceress, and Warrior are the 3 we have here.
All right, cool. So let's start with Chris, because you were taking the Sorceress, right? And how did that feel? How did gameplay feel? What was the vibe?
Felt pretty fluid. I do like that you have the option to switch between the top-down clicking and the WASD, because I know a lot of people, specifically my friends in real life, they don't like the top-down clicker. They don't like games like League of Legends, but they do like games like Path of Exile because you have the WASD controls like World of Warcraft and stuff. I like the, like you said, the expansive skill tree was massive and it looked amazing. Unfortunately, I had some power issues, so I didn't get to.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's all right. I made it to the final boss. It's beating on him, dodging and rolling, the dark, the grittiness of the world, and I do like that you had, I forget what it is, it's when you bring up G, you have like the skill gems and stuff to be able to hotkey different spells and stuff, so that's a big thing I really enjoyed, because I had the fire, I had the lightning, looked like chain lightning, hit multiple enemies.
Next to the passive tree, the skill gem system is probably one of the most foundational aspects of Path of Exile. So you have, in the course of this demo, you won't run into too much because the demo starts at the very beginning of the game, so it keeps it relatively simple, but the skill gems, which are where you get your actual skills from, are physical items. So you can socket them in, pull them out, you can trade them with other players if you want to, and then you also have things called support gems, which will augment your skill. So say I have Spark, the lightning skill that you start with, fires a bunch of little projectiles that go everywhere. You can get a support gem called multiple projectiles, which you can socket into your Spark, which causes it to fire even more projectiles. Or one called Chain, which will cause it to, when it hits an enemy, it'll chain to another
next one. That's awesome.
So we have tons and tons of customization there, because maybe we haven't mapped them all out yet, but maybe there's 100, 150 support gems in the game, and 50, 60 skill gems. That's not incalculable, but very large amounts of different combinations that you can theoretically do.
Awesome. Lord Petey, man, you had, I believe, the Barbarian.
I had the Warrior.
The Warrior,
and it was. It's interesting for me because I tend to play those types of classes, like the Paladin-ish type classes, up close and personal. So it kind of worked out really well for me. Now I've always loved the skill tree aspect of PoE 1. And when I opened up PoE 2, I was kind of taken back a little bit because I felt like the way that PoE 1 had it, it felt like everything was like really, really like fleshed out well, but it wasn't like even. Like some classes had a little more than other classes did. Yeah, and when I played this one, it seemed like everything was like almost like perfectly circular. So like the fluidity between the side classes and stuff that you could pick from seemed a little bit nicer, which I really, really thought was cool. And the gem tree that you were talking about, I love how customizable it is, because I've always felt that when you are playing your own specific like style, and that's why I really enjoy playing PoE vastly more than playing like Diablo or any of those other type of ARPGs, is because you have that custom ability to be able to pick your own classes and be able to kind of go in your own like genre and way you want to go in your fighting style. And I thought that was really, really interesting. Did you guys ever like think of like somehow like, I'm not saying combine them, but kind of like make them like more fluid, like being able to like bring one into another, like PoE 1 into 2, or is it always planned for them to be like two of their own separate types of games?
There was, so way back in 2019, the sequel rather, was first announced. And the original plan, though I wasn't with the company yet, but I was there at the announcement anyway as a player. And the original plan was actually to have both of the games be their own, like you could play either game, they would feed into the same end game after you had beaten the story and all that. But PoE 2 has just diverged so much on both a gameplay and technical level, where it would be a lot of extra work and kind of a disservice to the first game in order to still go ahead with that idea. So they have been split into two separate titles.
Is there any perks to being able to play PoE 1 that is going to pull into PoE 2? Because you are able to have so many purchasable cosmetics and things like that in PoE 1, that would they be able to be pulled into PoE 2?
On that front, yes. Any microtransaction that could apply to both games will.
Oh, that's amazing.
We have microtransaction progression in a sense.
Awesome. Yes. which is quite a lot of work for our rigging team and art team.
We're sorry, but we thank you.
Because we have to go back to this one armor set that we sold 8 years ago that was designed for to get a little technical. So
we'll take technical. It's fine.
Every class in PoE 1 has its own separate animate object. It's a distinct rig. And in PoE 2, in order to save on animation time, and since we have the ability to do it with improved systems on the back end, there's one rig that is then split out at a later stage to all the different characters.
Nice.
So that means that if you're making a set of armor for PoE 2, you make it once, and then it gets applied to everything. You make a set of armor for PoE 1, you make it 7 times.
7 times, gotcha.
Which is not so it is quite a lot of work for the rigging team, but it's worth doing because we want our players to feel like they're getting their money's worth for all the investment that they put in the first game.
Brother,
because if they hadn't put in that investment, we wouldn't be able to make the second game.
And that is really like that is affordable. I don't want you to gloss over that. Like to see the care from the team to do that and to put that in mind from a technical standpoint, it has to be a lot of work, but also from a progression standpoint and player agency and respecting the player's engagement. Kudos, that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Is there when it comes to like PoE 1, I enjoy the cosmetics of it because it is
clearly
because it is so it's old school for me. But with the trend that's been happening with all of these old school games, do they have plans on trying to take that and kind of like reskin it into a newer, updated version? Or are they planning to leave it as is for now until like, PoE 2 is kind of settled and then eventually kind of like bring it up graphically?
I mean, wherever possible, we are working on improving the first game. So we have our own in-house proprietary engine, and for PoE 2 that saw tons and tons of improvements to the point where it was like almost entirely a new beast. And I believe 3 leagues, so like 8 to 12 months ago now, we got both games functioning on the same engine, which was a prerequisite of that whole microtransaction thing. Because,
amazing.
Awesome.
in order to have a microtransaction function on both, they have to be fundamentally running on the same same engine. So that does mean that it's possible that a lot of the improvements that we make to PoE 2 could eventually be backported to PoE 1, but it's never quite as simple as that.
Exactly.
Because there's 10 or 11 years of legacy code that has to be accounted for, and there's a lot of complexities there that will make things break in fun and interesting ways.
Oh yes, I'm used to that in many different ways.
No doubt. Let's get Lord Simon for a second.
I'll talk about that.
No, you're good. You had some great questions, brother. In terms of your Ranger experience, right? We saw you rocking. How was that experience, and any questions you have?
Someone I played Ranger specifically just because the recommendation of it, because I knew someone was going to play Sorcerer Sporting and I didn't want to have like a double experience on that one. I really like how the Ranger plays because the stagger mechanic, actually working on bosses, actually saved my mind against the Biohack boss. That was something on ads, and you're able to like run around the actual map. And I actually like that mechanic too because it allows a lot more forgiveness and being able to actually not feel boxed in. So whenever she summons the ads, you're actually able to run out, clear the ads, then run back in and take them back on. I really like that decision. Is there going to be a lot like that in the overall game, or
so like arenas that are a little more open and give you the freedom?
Just being able to actually not feel boxed in, being able to like, just run out, clear ads if they summon in, and then be able to go back in.
Well, I think that's going to be kind of a boss by boss choice because like Devourer, for instance, in the next area after that, does actually walk you into a smaller arena, but it's meant to feel like it's this underground tunnel system, and the boss is a giant evil man-eating worm thing, and it is meant to feel a lot more claustrophobic down there, and like something could pop out of the wall and try and eat you at any moment. But I do know that every single zone in the game is eventually planned to have a boss.
Oh, nice.
At least every single zone through the story. And I imagine that means that there's going to be a lot of bosses that are just kind of, out in their own little arena, out in the open, in the area, rather than being in a sub-area or a side zone.
And another question I had, because I actually like this inventory system that you guys got, because I remember games like Pathologic and Stalker having that similar kind of like grid thing where you have like, is there any plans to like improve like the overall space in the inventory, or is it just going to be locked in specific?
It's not impossible. I mean, in our most recent expansion for PoE 1, we actually gave extra inventory space as part of one of the mechanics of that league. So it's definitely something that we are technically able to do, and we've experimented with it a bit. But for longer term storage, it is mostly need to be your stash, so you can access back in town or your hideout. That is what handles that. And stash tabs are actually like extra space. The space of the stash is one of the things that players can purchase in game, and is one of those things that will carry over from the first game if you purchased it there.
Nice. I like that stuff.
Awesome.
I got a couple more questions. I'll sit here all day.
We really had a good time with this game.
Yeah, we have.
Really good.
Yeah, it makes me excited to be actually able to go home and wanting to play this. So I picked hardcore because I've played it before, and I went through the progression and I died, and it gave me like the resurrect button because in my brain I kind of thought to myself, oh, hardcore, I'm gonna have like permadeath. But I was told that there wasn't permadeath in the hardcore version. Is there plans of having that and a ladder system involving it, or no?
Well, hardcore, it may just be the demo.
Okay. So I asked
theoretically, we think hardcore associates with permadeath. So maybe just for the demo purposes, hardcore here.
I will be honest, I wasn't even aware you could choose hardcore on the demo.
All good. Okay.
I did not.
Yeah, someone was very elite with their play session.
I like to click. What can I say?
As far as, so there's no plans to change how hardcore functions in PoE 1 going into PoE 2, and the way that we handle our releases, we do things called leagues, which is like an expansion that we do every 3 to 4 months, and the league will introduce a new like global mechanic. So like one of the earlier leagues, one of the simpler ones was Breach League, and in Breach, every time you went into an area, there's this demonic hand thing, and you go interact with that, and a bunch of demons pop out, you kill them, and then you get loot. That was the mechanic for that league. So if you're playing hardcore in a league, when you die, you go to standard, which is like the base version of the game. If you're playing hardcore in standard, then when you die, I believe your character just gets voided, which is
got it. Deleted.
That said, I have not played hardcore standard, so I can't say for sure.
Nah, you good.
I do play hardcore, but I play pretty much exclusively in the league releases.
Okay.
Got you. Got a follow-up question. Lord Nicholas, man, you play these games, you've been observing PoE. What's your question?
My biggest question is the biggest challenge a lot of
what's the biggest improvement? Would you say the biggest change that players can expect between PoE 1 and PoE 2?
That is hard to point to one thing. I mean, the most obvious thing is the technical and graphical updates, but going deeper than the surface level, PoE 2 is there's way more of an emphasis on considered careful combat, particularly when it comes to bossing. Like, the first boss in the first area, the Bloated Miller.
Yes.
Is more interesting and complex of a boss fight than, like, most of the bosses in the first few acts in PoE 1. And we really only go up from there. So, like, you know, one of our game directors, Mark Roberts, is one of... I mean, I'm a little biased here, but in my opinion, he's one of the most talented boss designers.
Talk your talk. It's you.
He's one of the most talented boss designers, like, in the ARPG space.
Wow.
And he has gone ham, so to speak. There is not a single boss in PoE 2 that isn't exciting, interesting, or weird or clever in some way.
And not to cut you, what was that boss encounter that you fought with the when she was just summoning the wolves? I thought that was pretty cool mechanic.
Being able to, like, summon all of that stuff and then being able to run out and actually clear out and then go back in for the kill. I actually really like it.
Yeah, Carrion Crone.
Carrion Crone, yes.
She's very interesting. She has, you know, like, she has complexities in that there's different abilities that she'll use depending on what distance you are, depending on how low health she is. She has the wolf summoning ability. Right. She also does something where there's, like, huge spikes.
Yeah, the spikes come up. Yeah, we saw that. Yeah.
There's a little bit of depth there in that those spikes that she summons will damage her own minions.
Ooh.
So if you're playing something like the Warrior where you can block, you can choose to just block all the wolves, kite them over to the spikes, and have her kill her own minions. So, like, even, like, something like that, if you compare it to a boss in a very early zone in PoE 1, which is a big guy with a sword, and he hits you. And, like, you know, back when Hillick was designed, who's, like, the first boss of PoE 1, that was what the game was capable of at that point, 11 years ago. But we've come a long way.
No doubt. And just you've had a follow-up question, or you were good?
So with the focusing on the bosses, because that's such a big aspect of the RPG, I was really impressed with not only how many bosses were in the demo, but the spacing on those bosses. Is that a pace that keeps up throughout the game in terms of consistency, or is it more of a front end heavy to start?
No, it's definitely planned to have at least one unique boss fight per story area. Sometimes more than one, but minimum one.
Right.
Additionally, each of those bosses is planned, well, maybe not each, side bosses that are not quest necessary are planned to have, like, special unique drops. So since you beat Crone, well, certainly you beat Crone.
He did.
He dropped the green quest item, the head of the Winter Wolf.
The head of the Winter Wolf, yes.
So, yeah, that gives your character a permanent small bonus. I think it's 10 cold resistance, and most side bosses are going to have a similar thing to that. So you're incentivized to go seek them out and find them
and farm
to get a little bit of extra power.
Yeah, now the question I have for me is engine looked absolutely phenomenal. The environments, the water, the tone. What engine are we using, and then also how long have you been in development?
Well, we use our own in-house engine. I don't know the official name of it.
Okay.
It probably has one, but I am on game design and testing.
Fair enough.
I'll sometimes see an issue from one of our, like, gameplay programmers or an engine programmer or graphics programmer, and I understand, like, maybe half the words they use. It's like they're wizards.
That proprietary engine is fire. So
that water looked amazing.
It looked amazing.
Flow when hitting the I was like,
sick.
Alexander, one of our lead graphics programmers, he did a talk at the last ExileCon going very much in depth. We actually have, so he talked about the water and went step by step as to how that is implemented and how he gets it to look natural and correct. But he also talked about global illumination, which is something a lot of games have, where, you know, it's realistically simulating light sources and how they'll interact with terrain and features and stuff. And we actually have our own ground-up, in-house built global illumination system.
Oh, wow.
He designed.
Wow.
And his words is like the I think he called it revolutionary or something like that. I don't remember specifically, but, like, we're doing things that apparently no one else is doing. it is designed very specifically. This is one of the advantages of having our own in-house engine. Is it's designed extremely specifically for our use case, which means like, you know, it might not look great if you were in first person or something, but since we can, you know, tailor make it and hide things that we don't need, that we might not need and such, we can also vastly improve performance while not compromising on quality.
That's awesome. Look, the game looks phenomenal. My final question is, a person who's the casual. I'm the guy that usually plays Diablo, never played a PoE game. One thing that was brought to my attention as far as free to play and that model, I think that's absolutely amazing. Is that maintaining through too? And then how are you guys dealing with like monetization? Is it more customization with, you know, suits, things of that nature? And how are expansions handled?
So the monetization model will be exactly the same in PoE2 as it is in 1. So it'll be free to play, and you can purchase cosmetic microtransactions. So like, I don't know, a little frog pet to follow you around, or a fancy hat or something like that. Nothing with any in-game impact. As well as stash space and stash upgrades, which, you know, is the only thing that arguably has some impact. But you do get given a certain number of free stash tabs to work with. So it's not like you have no storage up until then.
Awesome.
I've always been of the opinion that Path of Exile is it's a $20 to $40 game with an extremely generous free demo.
Okay, I got you. Listen, man.
There are people in the first game at least who have, you know, done challenge runs where they beat everything in the game on a completely free account. So it's certainly doable. I wouldn't want to do it because I'm a hoarder.
Yeah,
I like my extra
I'm the same
space,
way.
but you can definitely do it.
No doubt. And again, as far as release, how far out are we, you know, as far as the development of the game?
So the current plan is a beta in June. Assuming things go to plan.
Right.
Hopefully they do. And then from there, it's a matter of, you know, how many things come up in the beta that need fixing and need work. So we don't have a firm plan for full release just yet.
And for people who want to get a hold of that, where can they go? For people who are very interested in PoE2.
So part of our microtransaction model is we sell things called supporter packs, which, you know, come with a bunch of points that you can purchase whatever in-game stuff with, as well as exclusive like cosmetics that you can only get through a supporter pack. And we will have a supporter pack that includes includes beta access.
Awesome.
So technically, in order to access the beta, I suppose that is buy to play, but once we're full release, it'll be free.
It'll be free. Lord Octavia, this has been absolutely a pleasure. Impact East to cover PoE2. I think LOGNET, we approved. We like what we played. We like what we played. Everybody's cool.
I'm actually gonna play Path of Exile 1 now.
Yeah, I feel that. I'm the rookie. Like, I'm in the same boat as you. I'm like, I gotta play this game.
We'll get together. We'll get together.
On that topic, we have a live stream at 4. Time zones are hard. 4 or 5 p.m. today.
Okay.
Which will be all of the information on our next expansion, which is coming out very shortly. Easter weekend is when we launch.
Nice. Lord Octavia, an absolute pleasure to have you in the realm of the Lords. We are super pumped for PoE2. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And again, where can people find you if they want to know what's going on with you?
I have a Twitter account, I suppose.
Yes.
Octavian Zilch. Otherwise, not really too active. You can follow Path of Exile on Twitter at Path of Exile.
No doubt. Thank you so much for your time, brother. Much appreciated. PoE2 Iron Lord approved. Peace.